All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'll be talking to you a little bit today about the importance of spirituality in professional speaking. My name is Jabulani Zwane. I'm a professional speaker, a mindset development specialist, and I'm also an entrepreneur. So basically, like many of you who are on the call today, I do work with executives and with organizations, specifically in the topics of leadership, effective communication, emotional intelligence, high performance, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, TT, and the team as well for organizing this event. Now, for a very long time, I was working as a full-time pastor, and I actually got back into the saddle of corporate world in 2019 out of necessity. And spirituality is so crucial to who I am as a person. Before I share all my screens, I want to share a little bit with you about why it is that as people, we have this inherent awareness of our need to be spiritual. And I think many of us do know this, that these are these 5 existential questions that all of us ask. And the first question being a question about where do we come from, which is, of course, a question about origin. And the second one being, who am I? And that's a question of identity. And then who do I belong to or belong with? And of course, that's a question of belonging. Why am I here? The question of purpose. And then, of course, the last one is, where am I going? Now, these are the age-old questions that have plagued us as human beings since time immemorial. And by and large, all over the world, spirituality is premised on those 5 questions. More specifically, the reality of how we don't know what we don't know, and the power that we don't have, especially in situations that are very difficult, the abilities that we don't have, and I believe supremely so, how much control we do not have. And since we do not exist alone in this world, in our own spaces, we exist with others. And then there's that whole issue of then how do we negotiate spaces that we're in with others, seeing that we have these limitations. Now, let's think, for example, what happened now with COVID-19, or what's happening currently with Ukraine, or what's happening in South Africa, for those of you who don't know, but with load shedding. So there's this chief concern that we have about all the things that we have no control over, the ability that we don't have to control or to even manage or regulate those things, even as we're part of those spheres of existence. So in my mind, the question of accountability as a speaker, as a father, as a leader, as a citizen, as a human being in this world, is the question of accountability. Who is accountable? Who is supposed to be in charge of everything else that I have no charge over or I have no control over? So accountability and submission to the highest and most noble ideas, then surrendering myself to the process of growing up to be the best version of myself in that regard. I believe this is really, really crucial. And so we have an awareness, which I'll talk about a bit later on, the awareness of these limitations. And then our limitations then engrave, or our limitations make us aware of the need, or rather they make us question then, if we're so limited, then what else is out there? When things are in order, or when things go out of control, who else is out there, or what else is out there that can help us, that we can rely on to at least have a degree of sanity? Because we all know that one of the greatest questions that we have as people is the question of the unknown, and our struggle with unknown and anxiety that it brings. And so I want us to think about it in this way, that we have this undeniable realization that we are no match to a few things. Let's think about it. The first one is, of course, the magnitude of life itself. The second is the level of complexity, the complexity that is in this life itself. And then the magnitude of challenges or difficulties that come with this life. And I think more importantly, more specifically, we worry about the degree of danger that comes with these complexities And then the length of time, like how long, if something is happening, if I'm sick, if things are hard, like right now, even load shedding, and of course, if you don't have money, how long am I going to last in that situation? And of course, the diversity and the variables of complexity that come in those environments. So whenever I'm called in to come and speak, especially in apologetics now, to be very upfront, I am a Christian. I'm a pastor. I operate mainly my spirituality in the realm of Christianity. And so quite a lot of what I'll be sharing today is premised on that. So when I think a lot of times, especially about prayers, and whenever I get to counsel people, whenever people ask me questions about what's going on, I always note the following things: that people will always ask questions and concerns about their own ability, which then makes them fearful. Like they think about it, if I'm not able to control, if I don't have the ability to do for myself what I need to do for myself, what I need to do for my family, what I need to do for the community that I'm a part of, especially things that I see, problems that I see need to be solved, solutions that need to come about, or even resources that are required to achieve certain things. This is normally even the prayers. People normally pray around those things. And then, of course, the factor of consciousness, and consciousness being, of course, that reality of knowledge. Like, even though I know certain things, I also do know that I don't know. I know far less than what I don't know. And so then that also then brings me in a question of an understanding that if I don't know the things that I don't know, then do I really understand the way that I need to understand? And then the other thing, then is a question of morality. Morality then is this question of motives. Like we have this overwhelming sense of, guilt. And the reason why we feel guilty is because we don't always trust our own motives. We don't trust other people's motives. And because we know that sometimes we can lie. We know that sometimes we can be unreliable. We can be undependable. It's not lost on us that other people may also be just like us. And so therefore we then question their motives. We worry about their own personal constitution, or we can talk about dogmas, in the same way that we worry about our own dogmas. And then even if somebody does have, let's say, for example, XTN here happens to have a real supreme framework of moral constitution, can he really comply with that constitution himself? Right. And then the last, of course, is a question of accountability. And as I've mentioned, is this now, but is there anyone out there that takes personal responsibility to ensure that there's congruence in the world? That when good things are done, there is good return. When then the bad things are done, that there's going to be justice. That when people are trying and are doing their best to achieve whatever they're going to achieve, that eventually they succeed in executing and achieving those results. And this is one of the things that I always cause worry, or I think about even as a speaker, understanding the responsibility that I have, where I find myself being given the authority to be at the top of the hierarchy as a custodian of knowledge, as a custodian of solutions, as a custodian who's trusted to come up with problem-solving skills or problem-solving frameworks. I always ask myself, if everything is confined to me, then we've got a problem. If it's confined to everybody else in the room, we still have some issues there of limitation. Then the question always be, then if we don't find a common ground, then where else do we look to find that common ground? And for me as a Christian, of course, I have that belief of Judaistic, or even the Christian framework, which is, about God. Some people, of course, have got different things. And I want us to consider a few factors. And there are a few factors that, when I think about spirituality, are crucial. And all those three factors are framed around this question of transcendence, that outside of what we know, if we have limited knowledge, outside of the world that we can see, because we can only be able to see so much, what we can hear, what we can process, even where we can get to, where we have been. Even if we could be everywhere, is it possible for us to be everywhere at the same time when everything is happening? No, it's not. So there's then a question of transcendence, and transcendence is this reality that outside of what we know, there is so much more out there that we don't know. Higher, more complex, more powerful, more comprehensive, deeper, it's been beyond our own understanding. So transcendent consciousness, which is about the thought life, the knowledge sphere, the wisdom that exists outside of ourselves. That when we're stuck and we try to go inner, deep inside, and we find nothing inside because we have not been exposed, because we have no clue where to even begin, we have to go on the outside. And transcendence for me is two things. Transcendence is in the form, of course, of other beings as well, such as other people, like those who are experts, those who know more than we have, we know, those who are far more experienced. But we also do understand that even those who know more than what we know, those who've been where we've not been, are also limited. And so then there must be something higher than all of them. And that is basically then the transcendent, where the divine comes in, where the divine comes in. And the second part is transcendent life, which is about an ecosystem or the source of life that is beyond what we are able to offer or what even this life is able to offer. And then the third thing is the transcendent moral constitution, which then will be the moral supreme laws that are the highest ideal, the purest ideal that would submit to the well-being or to regard the well-being of others. You know, I'm always, when I think about this, I think about in the Greek and in the Bible, there's this word that is called agape. And the notion is that agape is love. It's one of the 5 words that you find in the Greek that describe love. One of them is phileo, which talks about that relational love between brothers, sisters, and friends and things like that. But there's this agape, and they're saying that in Koine Greek, which is ancient Greek, there was no match. They didn't have anything that they could liken to this word, because it describes a few things. It says that it is, first of all, it's unconditional love, right? The second part is that it's self-sacrificial. The third one is love. The fourth part is that it is expressed in the interest of the divine. And then the fifth element of that is that it's expressed without an interest or an expectation of return, with equal or lesser love. Now, if you think about that, for me, that is like a high supreme ideal that is pure, that is selfless, that is considerate of the existence of other beings in the ecosystem that may not have the equal power, that may not have the same ability, that may have, a certain degree of fragility. And so the giving of that love is not transactional. It is not transactional, but it is subjective to the unlimited source that has pure motives. And that's how I often think of, then, even for myself as a speaker, as a father, as a citizen, when I love, am I love only based on what I can get, or am I submitting my ability to love, to care, to help, to assist? Do I submit that to an ideal, to a source that gives that in abundance? And then the last one that I want to think about here is authority. And authority there is about that legal power. It's about leadership. It is about the governance of all that exists, again, submitted to that moral love, with that moral law of purity. And so I think of a few things. I think of this. It's crucial for me as a speaker to acknowledge and accept that there is an objective reality that is beyond my own subjective experiences. And in considering the words that I say, in considering the ideas that I share, I am responsible to measure that against that objective reality, that objective truth, so that, God forbid, I am not confined, or my thoughts, my ideas are not confined only to what my experiences are. The second is the effect of aspiration and inspiration, like aspiring to the ideals, even as I have the responsibility to share the ideals, to ensure that my own ideals are submitted to something greater than myself. And I did mention then the crucial element of then consulting with other people, other beings within this sphere, people that have done what I've done, people that have aligned to my own noble ideas of, my own pure ideas of helping people beyond monetary return. And of course, inspiration is that I am a human being that is then inspired by those that have gone through what I am about to go through, or what I have gone through. Either they overcome that, and then inquiring and being curious to know, how do they inquire? How do they get to that particular point? And then the third thing is about the faith and trust. And faith being that reality that there's so much that we don't know. Every time we're starting something, we don't even know if it's going to pan out. When you're starting a school, you don't know if you're going to finish. If you're starting work even with the client, you don't even know if they're going to pay you, right? And even as you're setting out, putting out content out there to advertise, to promote your work, you don't know who's going to respond. But you do that with that strong belief, as it describes in the Bible, that it is the substance of those things that are hoped for and the evidence of those things which are not seen. If you want a reference to that, it's in Hebrews 11 verse 1. But it is one of those, those ancient literatures beyond the religious connotation that the Bible is. But it is actually for me, it's like a natural law that all of us, we do and we act based on the substance of the things that we hope for, and in the absence of the evidence, right? And then the other part of that is the factor of trust. And trust is about surrendering my efforts and control to the outcomes aligned with what I'm aiming for, even though I have no assurance that it's going to be like that. Like, I don't even know who's out there listening right now. I don't know how much of what I'm saying is making sense. I don't know how much is going into your own consciousness, but I'm doing this with that belief that at some point, maybe some one or two things do go in. And then in terms of, transcendence, there are a couple of other things. There's this reality that I think about of outside of my limited, does my knowledge, the thing, of course, wasting time. And then there is then this eternity, which is about time. There's then about unlimitedness, right? We know that we're limited as beings. We're limited in substance. We're limited in existence. The moment you're born, you're going to die. We're limited in presence. You are limited to one particular area at one particular time, exposed only to the things you're exposed to. You're limited in ability. Even if you had the most incredible knowledge in the world, highly competent, better than anybody else, there's still the reality that we can get tired in that moment. You can be moody in that moment. You can be going through something, and those factors can compromise and jeopardize your own performance at the time. And then lastly, there's this reality of, consciousness, that there's only so much that we can be able to know. Hence, then, spirituality for me is outside of that limitation. Is there something that is unlimited? What is out there that contains all knowledge, all ability, all time that I don't have, that I don't see, that I don't perceive in this world? So I wanted to just, share that with you this morning, at accountability to higher ideals. And with that being said, I want to take this moment to say thank you so much for listening in.